You're 35,000 feet from the ground, strapped into a narrow seat, and the cabin just went dark. Not completely dark, but dark enough that you notice. The overhead panels drop to a dim amber glow. The reading lights go soft. Outside, the runway lights smear past the window as the engines scream toward full throttle. It feels like a technical hiccup, like the plane forgot to pay its electricity bill. But here's the surprising truth. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a power-saving measure. It was a decision made decades ago by engineers who were thinking about something you almost certainly weren't. What happens if this goes wrong in the next 90 seconds? Today, we're uncovering the hidden logic behind the dim cabin, how human vision actually works under stress, and why the aviation industry quietly built survival psychology into the moment most passengers are busy scrolling their phones. To understand why the lights dim, we first have to look at what happened before it. August 22nd, 1985, Manchester Airport. A British Airtours 737 is accelerating down the runway when an engine catches fire. The pilot aborts the takeoff. The plane never leaves the ground. By any reasonable measure, this should be a survivable incident. The aircraft stops, the doors open, and 131 people walk away. Except 55 of them don't. The fire spread fast, and the cabin filled with smoke. Investigators found that many of the victims were within reach of an exit. They weren't trapped by debris. They were disoriented. In the sudden darkness and smoke, they simply couldn't navigate a cabin they'd been sitting in for 20 minutes. The problem wasn't the engine. It was the 30 seconds it took human eyes to find a door they already knew was there. That disaster, along with a string of similar findings before it, forced regulators to ask a question the industry had been avoiding. What can we do before the emergency begins? Most people assume the dim lights are about power management. The logic seems airtight. Takeoff and landing demand enormous energy from the engines, so the cabin dims to redirect power to thrust and hydraulics. It sounds right. It's the explanation you'll hear murmured across 100 different flights. But if that's true, why don't we just use slightly more efficient LED lighting and call it done? Why does the dimming happen specifically at those two moments and nowhere else in the flight? And why is the effect so consistent across airlines with completely different aircraft? The power-saving story doesn't hold up. The cabin lighting system draws a negligible fraction of the power an aircraft uses on takeoff. We're talking the difference of a hairdryer against the output of a small power station. The real reason is biology. Your eyes contain two types of photoreceptors: cones, which handle color and fine detail in bright light, and rods, which handle low light vision, shape, shadow, and movement in near darkness. The rods are the ones that could save your life in a smoke-filled cabin. Here's the catch. Rods can't switch on instantly. Your pupil isn't a digital camera sensor that adjusts in milliseconds. It's a mechanical opening, a physical ring of muscle that takes time to dilate. And behind it, photochemical processes in the retina that take even longer to recalibrate. Think of it like a valve that has to be physically unscrewed. You can't rush it. Full dark adaptation in a human eye takes anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes. But even partial adaptation, enough to navigate smoke, find an exit, and read the shape of an aisle, takes 5 to 7 minutes. The lights dim on takeoff and landing because those are the two most statistically dangerous phases of any flight. By dropping the cabin brightness during those critical windows, the airline is giving your eyes a head start. If the cabin suddenly fills with smoke and the electrics fail, your rods are already partially tuned. You can see enough. It's not dramatic. It's not heroic. It's quiet, preemptive preparation built into the architecture of the flight itself. But here's the weirdest part, and this nearly derailed the whole protocol before it became standard. When the dimming procedure was first being debated internally, a faction of aviation engineers pushed back hard. Their argument was straightforward and uncomfortable. Anxious passengers evacuate worse than calm ones. Panic causes freezing, bottlenecks, and poor decisions. And what, they asked, is the most reliable way to make a passenger anxious right before takeoff? Suddenly, turn the lights down. The concern was that the very intervention designed to improve survival odds could trigger exactly the psychological state that lowers them. For a period, this was a genuine unresolved tension inside the industry, a safety measure that might produce a safety problem. The counter-argument that won was essentially pragmatic. Dark adapted eyes are a physical advantage that holds regardless of emotional state. Even a panicked passenger with adapted eyes navigates better than a calm one who is blind. The biology trumped the psychology. But the debate is worth knowing about because it reveals just how non-obvious this decision actually was. So why is this the standard across virtually every airline on Earth? Why not keep the lights bright and invest in better emergency illumination systems instead? This is where it gets interesting. The regulation isn't accidental. Aviation authorities, the FAA in the United States, EASA in Europe, codified specific requirements around cabin lighting during critical flight phases. Airlines don't dim the lights because they feel like it. They dim them because certification and liability leave them little choice. Here's the economic logic underneath it. Aircraft certification is extraordinarily expensive. Every system on a plane is tested, documented, and approved at a massive cost. Redesigning the emergency response framework around more powerful artificial lighting would mean recertifying aircraft, retooling exit systems, and retraining tens of thousands of crew members worldwide. The dim the lights protocol, by contrast, costs almost nothing. It requires no new hardware. It uses existing systems, and the biology it exploits has been reliable for roughly 200,000 years. In aviation, the cheapest intervention that demonstrably saves lives tends to win. Not because airlines are cynical, but because the margin between financially viable and not is razor thin, and regulators know it. But here's where it gets complicated. The dim lights rule was designed for an era of incandescent cabin lighting, bulbs that drew meaningful power and took several seconds to respond. Modern aircraft increasingly use LED systems, which shift brightness instantaneously and consume almost nothing. On a fully LED-equipped cabin, there's no functional reason the dimming protocol needs to follow the old timing curve at all. And yet, on most aircraft, the procedure is identical. Part of that is regulatory lag. Rules written for one technology don't automatically update when the technology changes. Part of it is crew training, which is deeply standardized and highly resistant to variation at scale. And part of it is that the underlying human biology hasn't moved. Your rods still need time. The LED cabin is more flexible. Your eye is not. Now here's the detail that makes this click into place, and once you notice it, you'll see it on every flight for the rest of your life. Watch what else happens at that exact moment the cabin dims. Flight attendants instruct you to open your window shade. Most passengers treat this as a minor inconvenience. It's not. It's the other half of the same design decision. The open shade floods your eye with natural daylight from outside, giving your visual system a bright reference point, while the interior dims around it. It also gives rescue crews outside the ability to see into this cabin, and it lets passengers near windows make an instant assessment of external conditions, fire on the left side, water on the right, before they choose which exit to move toward. The dim interior and the open shade are not two separate rules. They are one system, split across two instructions. When you see them together, you're looking at engineers thinking about the same 30 seconds from two different angles. Next time you feel the cabin go amber as the engines spool up, don't see an airline cutting corners on electricity. See a survival protocol written in light. See the investigators who stood in the wreckage at Manchester and asked what they could have done before the plane stopped moving. See a piece of human biology. The slow, mechanical dilation of a pupil turned into a design constraint that now quietly operates on millions of flights every single day. There's something worth sitting with in that. The most effective safety features are usually invisible until the exact moment they aren't. Reflective road markings, handrails, sprinkler systems, a cabin that goes a little dark before it takes you somewhere. The next time something ordinary seems slightly too specific to be accidental, too consistent, too precise, too universal to be a coincidence. It's almost always worth asking who built that in and what they were afraid of. The answer tends to be more interesting than you'd expect. If you enjoy seeing the hidden logic behind everyday things, hit like and subscribe for more.